Sorry, we had a bit of a full start there, guys, straight off the blocks, but good evening and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop.
Firstly, we'd like to start tonight by thanking our sponsor of the Dog Talk Live Q&As, Enduro, high energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat, for jumping on board and sponsoring all our live Q&As.
Tonight we are lucky enough to be speaking with Ian O'Connell from Doghouse Training, who will be picking what he thinks is the best question from our live viewers, and they will win a bag of Enduro Plus. Hi Ian, how you going?
Good, thanks, Laura. How are you guys going? G'day, Dan.
Good, thanks, mate. A bit easier now after that little full start, but we're back on track and ready to get going. So you want to tell us a bit about yourself, Ian, your family, where you're from, what you do?
Yeah, sure. Just briefly. Originally from just south of Casterton, born into a small family farm just south of Casterton. Grew up sort of on the family farm, but my father also did a lot of droving, and so was always around. Everything was done on horseback simply because of the nature of the landscape. A lot of heavily timbered, steep country, pretty inaccessible. So we always had teams of working dogs and horses. So they're my first memories. Left school a bit early. Went shearing and just working on properties, doing stock work, travelling around a lot, carting hay, fencing, shearing, as I said, stock contract work. And then slowly started buying a bit of land myself. So put a noose around my neck at a fairly early age and made me shear a lot longer and doing my stock work at night. And,
no motivation like owing money, right?
Exactly. And I kept doing that for a number of years. So I ended up with our own property. 18 years ago, we sold our property that we'd put together south of Casterton and moved to a place, the Grampians between Hamilton and Dunkeld.
Yep.
And we've recently just sold that and moved south to, we've bought another farm at Crosley and we're now living at Port Fairy. So, but now south of Hamilton.
Yeah, cool. Why to move?
Why the move?
Yeah.
Because I keep having birthdays and I just always loved the country south around Port Fairy, Crosley. I've actually... my whole life seems to be governed by, I don't know, there's a bit of a spirit or something about Kelpie, but like, as you know, Casterton was the birthplace of the Kelpie, so-called. My hero in life is Jack Gleeson, I guess, the young Irish stockman that started the breed.
Yeah.
And he turned up in Casterton, in 1870, sorry. But he actually come from where I am now at Port Fairy, and he actually, when he became ill, he came back to the Crosley, which is where I've got my farm, and passed away there at 38. He's only 38-year-old, and he's actually buried. His resting place is only about 3 kilometres from my farm now, Tower Hill Cemetery. So I don't know. I just think I'm in the loop. You might
gravitated towards it.
I hate to think where I'm going next, actually.
Well, you've made it past 38, so you're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how did your passion for working dogs come to be?
Sorry?
How did your passion for working dogs come to be?
Well, that's an interesting one. As I said, my first memories are definitely working stock and horses and dogs. But I grew up, it was a time, like it's going back a long time, when everything to get control of children, animals, whether it be horses or dogs, there seemed this thing about we needed pain or fear. And so I used to cop it when I was a little tacker, and if I didn't get things right, I wore it, as did the dogs that were around me, as did the horses and everything. That was the way society worked back then. I took an exception to it big time right at the start. And I guess I used to get away by myself with some dogs at any chance I got. This is when I was a child, and just do some play acting with them to try and get myself sorted a bit because I wasn't liking what I was seeing. Mm-hmm. And straight away, I just seen that I started getting some pretty good responses from the dogs in such a way that, when we'd be going somewhere to do a droving job on horseback, and I'd be only like, just a little fella, The dogs seem to follow me and not who the people that own them. So that didn't go down terribly well. But I just, right from an early age, I've seen some shocking things, and I know it still happens.
Yeah.
And I've just got this passion to try and make it better, because everything I've achieved in my life has come about from working dogs. They've given me everything that I've got. As not only material-wise, but just the companionship, the mateship. Like today, I hardly seen anyone else today, but I was out working with my dogs, and so they're my companions, and I just we owe them a huge debt of gratitude, and I just think we just got to change our, society needs to change the way they look at working dogs, but probably any dogs. I know a lot of, the enormous amount of people out there that treat their dogs extremely well, don't get me wrong, but it's not right across the board. And so I don't know if it's a passion, but it's a legacy, I guess. It's just something I need to do to try and change ways.
Must be good to go to work with your best mates every day.
Oh, it is like I am just the luckiest person in the world to be able to do that. I am now self-employed, where I can pretty much do what I want to do. It hasn't always been like that, of course, but now it is. And just to go out working stock with your dogs, training a pup, there is no. I could not think of anything better. It ticks all the boxes for me.
So you mentioned their dogs all day. So what's a normal day for you and your team these days? If there is such a thing as normal.
No, well, that's the other great thing about farming with livestock and dogs. Every day is different. You just never know. One day machinery might be broken down, so it might be a trip to town to get something repaired or get some replacements. So 4 or 5 of your dogs will be on the back and go to town. They absolutely love it. See what the town dogs are doing. Other times, like this morning, I was crutching in a cradle, and I had a few dogs just keeping the sheep up to me. I was there by myself. The sun was shining. Nothing better. Love it.
You mentioned there taking dogs to town. You always have a dog with you, mate?
Oh, absolutely, always. I think this is one of the big things. Anything that I do say tonight is only my opinion. So, and I know there's a lot of people out there with fantastic dogs, and they do it. They achieve those results not doing what I do. So, what I'm going to be talking about is just what I do. But a big part for me of having good working dogs is they've got to be part of my life. They're not like a piece of machinery where I've just got a job for them to do, so I go and start them up and they must perform. They are part of my life. A dog's got this innate desire to be with a human. Sometimes I'm not sure why they have, but they just have. They want to belong to a human, and 24/7 they're yearning to be with the human. So if you want really good working dogs, make sure they're an emotional being. They're not much different to humans in the fact that they feel everything we feel. They feel joy, pain, fear, anxiety, depression. You name it, dogs have it. Yeah. And so if they've got this innate desire to be with a human, the more we can cater for that, I think the happier their life's going to be. And believe me, a happy dog is a huge asset. Like a happy dog is a great dog.
100%.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder sometimes when they're not treated good, why they still hang around, right?
Well, that's their biggest fault, I think, is that they're so forgiving. I think I'm only human too, and I've got undesirable traits, and I've got probably what has taught me more about dogs is dogs themselves. What has taught me the most about dogs is dogs themselves. And when I was a young fella, if I did spit the dummy at some stage out in the middle of the bush with a mob of weaned heifers, cattle or something out in the sticks, and if you put a bit of heat on a dog and he decides to leave you and head for home, well, you very quickly learn that that's a big mistake.
Yeah.
I learned that a long time ago by having dogs that, every now and then you'd have one that would say, well, no, I'm not putting up with that. I'm off. And you soon learn, righto, that hasn't done anyone any good. So now we're all in this together, guys. So we'll stick together.
How did you handle those particular situations when something when you did put a bit heat and old mate thought, oh, well, I'll get out of the kitchen?
Oh, I can remember one particular time out in the middle of a stringy buck scrub it was, so no fences, nothing, and the horse tipped me off. I don't know, I'm not sure, I wouldn't have been very old, but the horse tipped me off, and I was obviously come pretty unhappy about the whole situation, and I might have started roaring or bellowing or something. And the dogs went then, so the horse had gone, the dogs had gone, and here I had a mob of, I'm not sure whether it was sheep or cattle, but I'll never forget that. That was, and of course I was going to end up getting home with not having done what I was supposed to have done. So
yeah,
we all copped it that day.
And a little bit of exercise along the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
How has the style of dog you currently have in your team changed from the style you started with?
Yeah, I think dogs generally, like I travel around a bit doing schools and stuff like that. So, up into the pastoral zones, it's totally different to where we are down here. High rainfall areas, high stocking rate, a lot of crossbred sheep, a lot of cattle, intensively grazed, etc. So we've got a different type of dog here. But back when we were doing everything on horseback and in inaccessible country, most of our dogs were fairly wide dogs. They kept off their stock because you couldn't afford to upset your stock, otherwise you'd lose them.
Yep.
And so they were a thinking type of dog that kept off their stock pretty well. And whereas now everything's got to be done yesterday. We've got load B doubles, we've got crutching trailers, penning up. We've got laneways, we've got motorbikes. It's the whole thing's changed. Even though I know there is areas where they haven't.
Yep.
You take the high country where, of course, things aren't much different as far as handling livestock and dogs to what they were probably 150 years ago. But where we are here, it's totally different. So now my dogs are more, they're not. I haven't got, those deep, wide casting, searching dogs anymore because I don't need them. I've got dogs that just get the job done, shift stock, crossbred sheep, etc. Yeah.
I actually had this conversation with a mate last night and talking about, big casting dogs. And I think exactly what you said there, times have changed. Like now where you'd go out on a horse and your dog had to work and, it was walking the whole time and you'd send it out. But now to conserve the energy, if you can get around on bike, buggy, car, why wouldn't you conserve your dog and try and get as close as you can to your stock to get everything to mob up a bit and let your dog then do its job, and that way you can actually check the fences while you're doing it. Check someone has got a head stuck through a fence.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that is what that's what I've noticed. That what has changed. Yeah, like if you go into if you went into a big paddock with a horse to do a muster or something, well, you didn't have time to check the fence, check everything. Especially big paddocks, a few thousand hectares or something. So you rely on your deep casting, searching dogs, and whereas now, no, sure, you go into a paddock, while you're there, check the water, check the fences, check for calf sheep, check for sick cow, and while you're doing it, you're sort of pulling the mob together, and then, as you say, just let your dog off and he's fresh. But it is the dogs aren't as fit as they used to be. We might have even bred out some of the endurance out of the dogs because it's not required. Not where we are here. I know, there's a lot of, Australia's a big place, and a lot of places endurance is needed every much as, I remember I used to shear on Commonwealth Hill, which is, I think, the biggest fenced sheep station in the world, or it used to be anyway, 3 million acres, and 22,000 acre paddocks are small paddocks. So those dogs that are working up there, although even though saying that now there's motorbike helicopters that are taken over from the dog even there. So, but yeah, there's nothing I see now where you'll see a young fella head out in the paddock to do a muster with a dog on the back of a motorbike. He'll send the dog, and the dog's either going to go the wrong way or it's a bit slow. So old mate passes the dog on the motorbike, does the cast himself, and then sort of wonders why we haven't got these good deep casting dogs. That's why, you know, we're cutting them out of a job.
Yeah.
Times have changed, so we move with the times. Dogs move with the times. So we just need dogs that suit our enterprise.
Yeah, so technology, while it's sped things up, it's actually taken away a few things as well.
Well, it's changed the dogs, but I'm never against progress. I think the world we live in now, despite what you read and what social media tells us, I think that the world is an amazing place. It's far better now than what it used to be. I'm sure it is. Anyone that ever went through the First World War, Second World War, the Depression, I didn't, but close. I think they'd think we're pretty lucky. So, no, I think we just change with the times. We go with it. We accept change. And, dogs are changing. We're changing. Everything's changing. Go with it and enjoy it.
I reckon we're pretty lucky too, mate. A lot of us complain about a lot, but I reckon we're pretty lucky either way. So,
yeah.
You know, just, I enjoy looking at the sun every morning, mate. So I'll keep that going for me anyways.
Absolutely. That's the one.
Where we are here.
So, what are your fundamentals of training?
Oh, wow. You've really opened a can of worms now. Fundamentals of training. Well, I don't know where to start. It's such a big subject, but I think just a few things that I would start with. One is I'm never in a hurry to train a dog. Like the number one principle to me is when you're thinking of time frames for training a dog is the 1 year in 7 rule. So a 1-year-old dog is equivalent to a 7-year-old child. And so a 6-month-old dog is equivalent to a 3.5-year-old child. A 2-year-old dog is equivalent to a 14-year-old child. So it's that 1 year to 7. We've got to remember that, you know, if we've got a 6-month-old pup out there and have all these great expectations of backing the drench race all day, loading trucks, mustering 1,000 sheep out of a 100-hectare paddock or something, if it does it, well and good, but it's not going to do it for long, because it's like taking a 3.5-year-old child down the coal mine. You know, you're going to cook them. Let them grow up. At that age, they don't have the capacity to learn. So my number one thing is I'm never in a hurry to. People say, when should we start training a dog? Some of the best dogs I've had, they weren't trained until they were 7 or 8 year old. You know, they've come out of Melbourne. Someone's had a Kelpie down there, and it's absolutely drove them mad, as it would and it should. And I've got it. It hadn't seen a sheep for 8 years. Probably, you know, in no time at all. Because it's got the capacity to learn. It's got its natural instincts. It's had a good upbringing in that nothing bad's ever happened to it. Gee, they're amazing dogs. So that's number one, is let them grow up. And confidence. They must have confidence. If you look at the grand final the other day, the AFL grand final was held in Perth, and you see all those champion footballers, and people say they're very talented. To me, talent and confidence get mixed up a bit. To me, they're very confident people, those athletes, and that gives them then the ability. They believe in themselves, and I think it's the same with dogs. I think, don't worry about talented dogs, think about confident dogs. So if you've got a young dog, and no matter what he does, whether it's right or wrong, tell him he's right, tell him he's wonderful, let him become obnoxiously confident. And then when he's 1 or 2 year old, you can move, you've got something to work with. It'll get to the stage where you won't be able to offend him, and he's there for you, and you'll get 150% from him. Whereas if you're on his case when he's young, first you'll have to get him out from under the ute, and then he's going to take off from you as soon as you raise your eyebrows at him. Just let your dogs love life and become super confident. So to me, a dog under 9 months old can do no wrong. If it has done something wrong, it's my fault, because I've let it get into a situation it shouldn't have been in. I use the analogy of, if you've got someone, the biggest freeway in Melbourne, I think, is probably the Monash. I'm not sure. I was trying not to spend too much time down there, but it's 4 or 8 lanes of traffic, bumper to bumper. This is pre-COVID. if you happen to live on the side of the Monash and you had a little Johnny that had a fascination for cars, and you just happen to leave the front gate open, it's going to get fairly messy with Johnny standing out in the middle of the Monash. So it's up to us to shut the gate. And it's the same as us with our 6-month-old pup. If your little pup's out in amongst the ewes and lambs and got a few going over a fence and he's got a lamb down having lunch with it, well, it's your fault for letting that happen. So,
yep.
Yeah, just let them grow up. There's a whole lot of other things that come into it. Genetics play a big part. So work out what your enterprise is. What do you want the dog to do? And then go and try and source the genetics that are going to fit your enterprise. There's too much of this, a dog is a dog is a dog. That's not the case. Every dog is so different because they're made differently. They've got different genetics, different traits. So, you know, if you want your paddock dogs or your mustering dogs or your yard dogs or your truck dogs or your cattle dogs or your goat dogs, go and try and source the genetics that suit your enterprise rather than try and make a Mercedes out of a Volvo. You know, if you want a Volvo, go and buy a Volvo. So there's a bit of that. So I think, I'm not sure what the question was now, but anyway, I'm just ranting. But I think there are two things that need addressing really when we're talking about working dogs and handlers. One is genetics. It plays a big part. Sometimes I think it's overrated because we put everything down to genetics and nothing is attributable to the handler. But I think genetics to match the enterprise is huge. But the other thing is the handler's knowledge, and that's way over 50%. I'm rating that at plus over 80% of the equation is the handler's knowledge. You know, there's all these other things that us humans have to learn to do, whether it's flying an aeroplane, driving a car, you know, any skill, we get trained to do it. Whereas opposed to when we're given a working dog, we just got absolutely no knowledge on there's no knowledge. No one's taught us, we've got a dog, what are we going to do with it? And in the process of working out what we're going to do with it, quite often we do a fair bit of damage because we arc back to the old days when it was bash and crash and there was a high cull rate with dogs. Any dog that couldn't stand what was happening to it, and well, didn't last very long. There really isn't a place for a cull rate. I don't think shouldn't be a cull rate. Like I don't have a cull rate with my dogs. Every dog can give me something. So even if it doesn't suit me, I can find out what it is good at and then find someone that's, you know, has that desire for a dog.
Yep, so it always suit. If it doesn't suit you, it will suit someone else. It's always a need for it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, like I don't know whether we're going to get onto, you know, what type of dog do you look for, but when I'm looking at a dog, there's really only one thing I don't want, and I don't know why. It's just I've never seen one. And that's the tail, especially a Kelpie. I'm not too concerned about tails on border collies, but on a Kelpie, if I see when it's a pup, it's all over the place. But as it starts to focus on its work or focus on its livestock, if that tail goes up in the air or it's wandering around all over the place, quite often hitting itself on the back of the head while it's working stock, should be someone's pet, because I just very rarely seen a dog like that makes a good working dog. So I like to see the tail still and down, and you're still, and the dog is usually focused, it's usually strong. So there's a few things like that when I'm looking for dogs, but most of them, they've got heaps to give us. It's just quite often the handler doesn't know how to find it.
Yeah, doesn't know how to get the best out of that particular dog.
Yeah. But it's genetics and knowledge. They're the two big ones. Yeah.
Very cool. You want to read that, Laura?
We've just had a question come in from Jeff Wallace. How do you get your dog's attention to stay on you and away from distractions, especially a young dog struggling with fundamentals because of distractions?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's essential that we do have some way of gaining their attention when we need it. So, and I use their name so that when my dogs, I spent a fair bit of time with Greg Prince years ago, and to me he was, I called him the Don Bradman of working dogs. I mean, I haven't spent time with every person that's great with dogs, so there may be better people than even Greg, but to me he was the best I ever come across. And I could talk more about that, but he was the one that he said, use the name is the attention grabber. So, dog doesn't carry a mobile phone. It's not wired up to a UHF. So when you want their attention, they've got to give it to you when you say their name. So the way I teach that, and a lot of people do, I know, is just, when they're a pup, one of the things you've got to go through the process is teaching them to lead, and you don't want them, that you don't want them leading you. It's up to you to lead them, just so that they're soft and gentle on the lead. Every time that lead goes tight, I just say then I do three things in about a matter of 1 second. I'll give when the lead goes tight, I'll give it a short, sharp jerk, but well, within reason. I certainly don't want to hurt my dog, but a short, sharp jerk. I'll say the dog's name. Immediately the dog will look at you. I don't know why, but it just does. If you do those two things, the dog will look at you. We're still talking about within 1 second.
Yep.
Reward your dog, praise your dog. So three things. Say then the short tug on the lead, say the dog's name, and praise it. Those three things, and it won't be long at all. It won't be long before, as soon as you say the dog's name, you've got that dog's attention without having to worry about the lead or anything. So it's quite an easy thing to teach a dog, but it's essential that you do. But it's probably the only part that I wish I knew a better way, rather than jagging the lead. It's probably the only discomfort that I ever put on a dog in its life. If you do it properly, it takes about 10 seconds in the dog's life. But whatever you do, don't hurt your dog or damage your dog doing it. And that's why I don't like teaching people to use this system, because I just a bit concerned that they'll won't do it right.
And obviously a little bit of repetition while that dog's younger, and iron out those problems moving forward.
Yeah, I just missed that. Sorry, Dan.
Use a bit of repetition while that dog's younger. Find out that problem, you don't need to wait till that dog's in its like teenage status kind of years.
Yeah, it's all repetition. But once again, with young dogs, remember what I said, 6-month-old dog's equivalent to a 3.5-year-old child. If you're too repetitious at doing, if you're trying to teach a 3.5-year-old child their alphabet time over time over time, he's going to get sick of learning by the time he's 4. So with a young dog, little bits here and there. But one of my best training aids is 3.5 mil hard braided starter cord. You buy it in a hardware shop. 3.5 mil hard braided. And I get about 10 meters of that. So it's very light, but because it's hard braided, it doesn't get knotted up. I put a little tip on the end of that, and wherever the young dog is going, he's dragging it with him. He doesn't even know he's dragging it. And because I've had probably 50 years experience at it, whenever he goes flying past me, and I will just get my timing right in that I'll put my foot on it the same time as I say his name. And the little pup will do a lateral bungee jump, but it's associated with his name. And it's only a matter of time before he goes flying past me without dragging the lead, and I say his name, and he just pulls up and looks around. I've got his attention. So I hope that was Jack. I hope that answers his question. But if anyone's got another way of getting a dog's attention and having it all the time, whether you're right beside you or they're 500 metres down the paddock, I'd love to learn it, because that's, as I said, it's the only thing that I'm a little bit cautious about teaching.
As it stands, mate, I use the same technique, so I'd be interested to see if someone's got one as well, because I'd give it anything a go. Yeah,
exactly. But you've got to have it. You've got to be able to get their attention, and but do it. There's a good way of doing it, and
That 100%. There's a few more questions here, Laura. I'll get you to read those. Yeah. I've left my glasses over there.
There's one here from Ethan Fremantle. If a dog has If a dog is naturally a -5 type of temperament, like you mentioned in your training videos, that an owner beforehand had overworked, like you mentioned earlier, how do you suggest about rebuilding its confidence and giving it a bit more will to go?
Yeah, I see a lot. I think everyone's always heard people say, you know, you'll get one good dog in 100 or one good dog in 300 and things like that. I think where that statement comes from is temperament in dogs is just like temperament in people. You can get very shy, sensitive people, and you can get bold, arrogant people, and anywhere in between. And you can get the same with dogs. You get very shy, sensitive, timid dogs, and you can get, you know, arrogant, out there, loud, full-on dogs, and anywhere in between. And we've got to identify that when they're young, so we know how to treat them. If I'm good at anything, if I'm able to do anything, it's to identify the temperament of a dog. And it's the first thing I need to do when I go to train a dog, is work out where it sits on the temperament bar. Is it out there, you know, loud, confident, hard to hard to offend, or is it one that just gets offended by me looking at it and is shy and sensitive? They're my favourite dogs because it means I don't have to apply any pressure to get a response. But if I was a hard trainer and a hard person, you know, bash them, crash them, knock this out of them, knock that out of them, that sort of horrible language, well, anything minor, anything on the negative temperament stage is not going to cut it. They're not going to make it. So they're the ones, you know, the people that say you'll get one good dog in 100. It's simply because the only type of dog that can stand up to them is a +5, those loud, arrogant, full-on dogs. They're the only ones that can stand the pressure. And the rest are just, they don't cut it. So they're out of the equation. As far as Ethan's question there, with the -5, someone's had it, if I understand the question right, someone's had that dog before Ethan and probably put too much pressure on it, and it's melted away and probably doesn't think much of humans, and pretty much given up on life, really. Most of the time I think you can bring them back, but it takes time, and it's just a matter of just back right off the dog. It can do no wrong. If you tell it to sit and it doesn't sit, fine, good dog. Everything is good about it, no matter what it does. And just let it start to love a human again. And then slowly, it's just counselling, really. And you'll, you know, put it with some small mob of young sheep that are going to run around, whether it does the right thing, the wrong thing, or nothing. Praise it and just build its confidence back up. And I'd be surprised if you don't get back on track again. And that's what I meant earlier when I said dogs are very forgiving, too forgiving.
They are, 100%. While we're on the term of pressure there, I've got another one here from Brett Medway. Do you consider habits such as tail turning in a good dog a trait or a habit that has been formed or genetic?
Tail turning in a dog, and for anyone that doesn't know what it means, it's just every time a dog, when it changes direction, when it's working stock, a dog ideally should turn in towards the stock and apply pressure to the stock, and that's what keeps your mob moving.
So that's head's always facing the stock that's working.
Turns into the animal or turns into the mob, and then it goes across. And when it turns again, its head turns into the mob and what have you. A tail turner is one that when it turns away from the stock, so it takes the pressure right off the stock and off itself. It can be genetic. I've seen there's a line of very good dogs, and I've had some of them from this line actually, and they're notorious for throwing a tail turn. They're quite strong, but they just do it. It's just an inbuilt thing in the genetics of them. They'll only go one way. I think it's anti-clockwise. So that's just genetic. It had nothing to do with anything else. It also can be caused when a pup, you know, we've got young pups, young dogs, and we're letting them work stock. We're letting them work too close. So the little dog's right up the back, you know, right in behind the stock. When the stock come back on it, it learns that to release the pressure from itself, it does a tail turn. And the same as if I always teach my dogs to walk backwards. because quite often I want my dogs to release the pressure on the stock. You know, I might be drafting sheep and I'm got a good flow. So I just tell the dog to get off and he walks backwards. I teach them that because otherwise, if you tell a, you know, through your training or whatever, if you tell a dog to move off its stock, to give the stock room, quite often they'll tail turn to get away from them, and that's quite often because someone has thrown something at them to get them to move back, and they'll be ducking missiles as they turn away from the stock. So tail turning can be caused by handler's error. It can be caused by just letting the dog work working stock too close, or it can be genetic.
In there, you mentioned also you touched on one-sided dogs. How would you go about correcting a dog that you found one-sided?
What you mean by one-sided is that they've just got a tendency always to be either on your left or on your right, or always favouring the going clockwise and don't like going anti-clockwise. Yep. Once again, we can create those dogs, and the utes, people working dogs out of utes is a great example. They've got the driver's window down, so the dog is always on their right. Yep. And the dog grows up like that, and it's very hard then to get the dog to come around and work on the other side. But it's also very genetic, and it's just like we are left-handed or right-handed. And if someone told you tomorrow to, if you're right-handed and told you to start writing with your left hand, it's very awkward, and dogs find the same thing, I'm sure. So if we get a little pup, and one of the things we observe when we start training it, because the first thing we do is balance training, and if we want me to explain that, we can later, but just observe your little dog, or it might be an 8-year-old dog, it doesn't matter, but you've started training this canine, and if you notice that he's keen to go one way but doesn't like going the other way, well, I just tend, once again, build his confidence up. Don't let him go his favourite way. Only if he shuts down altogether and doesn't want to play, we'll let him go his favourite way and then have another go. But just try and get him to go whatever it takes to go the way that he doesn't want to go, and really work on that, and don't let him go his favourite way too much. But don't do it to the detriment of him, whereby he doesn't want to go anywhere because you've shut him down.
Do you find that a lot of people that hunt their dogs around their stocks and might push their stock rather than pull their dog back around, that their dogs, if they're right-handed, their dogs actually go around stock better and off anti-clockwise because they're pushing it rather than coming clockwise, because their dogs tend to cut in on their stock coming clockwise, just purely because they're right-handed, they go that way as without even knowing it?
Yeah, you've lost me a little bit there, Dan. Can you?
You're right. Yeah, no. So do you find that like some right-handed people, without even thinking it, they're always pushing their dog anti-clockwise? So they find that their dog kicks off their stock anti-clockwise and gets out there nice, but then their dog when their dog goes clockwise, it actually might steal ground and come in closer to the stock.
Yeah.
Do you see that often?
Yeah, all the time. And once again, with all the schools I've done, and you get people coming out there with their young dogs, and they're the things you pick up straight away that the person doesn't know they're not doing the right thing because they haven't had the experience, and they haven't had the knowledge. I talk about this lack of knowledge out there, and you pick it up straight away. No, that's it. If your dog's got a problem, don't look at your dog. Go in the mirror and have a look. As I said to you the other day, just look in the mirror, and you're going to look at your problem, because there's all these things that, when we start our training, especially balance training in a small area, and what you say is one of them. Your body language is always, because you're right-handed, you're always, without you even thinking about it, you're pushing your dog around the right-hand side, and yet one day you're going to be out in a paddock and wonder why he's not going around the left-hand side and why he's cutting in. It comes back to that bloke in the mirror again. It's all, and it's the same thing, when we're getting our dog to go around stock, quite often in a small area for a start, is we don't give our dog, we cut our dog off. As the dog starts to go around the stock, we walk into there, like we squash the dog as in against the fence or the sheep. We don't give the sheep anywhere to go. We close the passage off for the dog. without even thinking about it. So there's so many things it's not difficult. If I can do it, anyone can do it. But it's just all this knowledge that we need to learn as we go through life. And it's...
Well, there's another scenario to create that tail turn once again, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, if you've got something on a fence and you're putting pressure on a young dog, and you know, the easiest way for him, if he hasn't got that, or she hasn't got that little bit of will, is to go backwards rather than to punch through that gap or create its own.
Absolutely, it's so true. And just remember that dogs have evolved over thousands of years, I dare say, to be very suspicious of humans, because once, you know, as soon as they're born, they virtually know what awful people humans can be, but also what wonderful people humans can be. And I think in our training DVDs, we prove it, that depending on the dog's temperament, some will just take no notice of what you're doing with your bits, but generally a lot of dogs that you're trying to get going correctly, they're very observant of the handler, in that they don't like coming straight to the front of you. They're more inclined to come into your left or your right, and they're even happier to come in behind you, because they've evolved to know that a human can do a lot less damage to them from the side or the back. And so when you start training these dogs, if you just are aware of that and try not to front up to your dog too much unless you're trying to kick them out a bit, but if you just keep working don't front up to your dog, otherwise he'll be more worried about what's going to happen to him than what he is worried, wanting to get around some stock and have some fun. So what we're doing with ourselves, our body language, plays such a big role when we start training dogs. But so that's the training DVDs that we put together. That's all, and we prove it in them. We've had dogs do it. Knowledge.
That's right. Lauren, Laura, do you want to ask that question from Lauren?
Lauren Vest has just had a question come through. What do you think is the low-hanging fruit for people training their own dogs? The simplest, easiest changes or exercises to work on that give the greatest reward or change?
Yeah, I wasn't real clear on that, but so you're just wondering what are the best exercises you can do to train your dog? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, to get the most reward or change, or try to change a particular style within your dog. With my training, even though I'm very flexible with it, it's not clinical. I have layers, like I like that. Call it a system of layers, and like that's why I call the training system the doghouse. It's like building a multi-storied house. You get the foundation right, and then you put the first floor on, put it properly, and then 2, and then 3, and then by the time you get to the 9th floor, you've got a really well-constructed, successful building. And it's the same as training a dog. You start off, get your first layer down, which is identifying its natural instincts to be a heading dog, because that's what our working dogs generally are, not all of them, but most of them are heading dogs. So identify that trait in your dog. Let it know that you know what it's all about, so that you're working in unison. So you've got credibility with your dog. So that's the first layer. The second layer is, third, I'm very big on the care of your dog to make sure that, that its general health is good, like internal parasites, worms, external parasites, fleas, bedding, nutrition. These dogs, they're magnificent athletes. So don't look after them, treat them like the Olympians get treated to get the best out of them. So, identify the instinct, make sure the care you take, you've ticked all the boxes as far as nutrition, housing, bedding, parasites go. Then you can start looking at control, so off stock. Now, if you've got a little pup, 3 month, 4 month, 5 month, or even 6 months, and it wants to go and chase some sheep. Well, if you let it go and chase some sheep, you put up with the consequences, because it's going to be mayhem. So don't start teaching it to sit and to come off stock at a young age, because what you're doing is remember, it's only got a very small brain at that stage,
And it's like taking a baby's thumb out of its mouth and giving it a smack. The baby's got no idea why you've done it, and pretty much as soon you're going to have a very twisted up baby. So and that's the same as calling a young dog back off stock. You know, don't do that. Don't let it near stock if you don't want it to be chasing stock. So, you know, teach the dog when there's no stock around, when it's on the lead, every now and then teach it to sit, and we have methods to do that. Teach it to sit, teach it to stay, and teach it to come to you when you call it. So those three things when there's no stock around. In the process, at any age, you can be doing this balance training. And that's just where we encourage the dog to go right around one side of our little mob. Remember, when we start training a dog, everything is small. It'll be a small dog. It'll be in a small area with a small number of small sheep for a small amount of time. Everything is small. Don't go and put a young dog out with 50 or 100 big crossbred sheep or a mob of cattle. Don't go and put them out into a big paddock. Don't go and play, you know, don't go for a training session that takes half a day. Start small and then gradually get bigger. And when I say small, in a small 10-metre diameter yard with, say, 5 lambs, young sheep, not big sheep that are going to stare your dog down and do that confidence that we're talking about. That's ideal. So when you get in that 10-metre diameter yard, pretend that you're out in a 1,000-acre paddock and he's going around 500 head of cattle. He's only going around 5, but he's got to start with 5. And you're going to balance him up, get him to just get him to flow off you, just exactly how he is when he's going to be out working when he's older. So I think that's, you know, and it was a big question from Brett, but
I think you answered pretty quickly, because everything you spoke about earlier referred back to bond, really. So if you're going to go back there, like the low-hanging fruit, I think, is creating that bond with your dog and not going too hard on it too early.
Yeah, well, not going too hard at all. I don't see it's necessary. I just don't. If you find yourself being tough on a dog, as in, you know, being bashing and crashing and relying on fear or pain, there's a better way. And
I mean, in terms of demanding too much from it, to be honest, but I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, but anyway,
I see where you're going.
I'm a firm believer in what you're saying, Dan.
Yeah, no, you're very passionate about your dogs, mate. We can feel it in the conversations we've had the last couple of weeks. I admire your compassion and just your passion for dogs, like not just working dogs, but all dogs in general. I admire that. I think that's fantastic. Probably more people need to take that approach.
Yeah, and if I could just say something else there, I think society, like, I hear all the time, because I'm traveling around, I see bad things. I see dogs that aren't doing anything, and the person tells me it used to be good when it was a pup and now it's not interested. And I know straight away what's happened. You know, it's had a shock collar on it, or it's, you know, it's had bad stuff happen to it. And I'm all the time coming up and seeing that. But society is going to dictate how we care for our livestock and treat our dogs. I mean, as I said before, a lot of people treat their dogs extremely well, and that's great. But there's still an attitude out there. You know, continuously I hear of, you know, the dog used to bite, so I knocked it out of it. I'm going to break a dog in. What is how do you break a dog in? Or, you know, how do you break a horse in? Is what you're doing is applying that much fear or pain to the animal that they submit. Well, if once that's happened, to me, you've lost 70 or 80% of the potential. I mean, they're just doing what they need to do to stay alive, and they dislike you intensely. I think that's a better way of saying hate. They dislike you intensely. I think, without mentioning names, I think there was one of Australia's best racehorse trainer had amazing results. Probably was the most successful racehorse trainer for the last couple of years. He's now out of business because of the methods he used to to achieve that. And I'm talking about the use of electricity, that charges. And the same with dogs. I've seen people having amazing results with dogs, say, at trials, but I know how they achieve them. And once again, with electricity. But society, well, if they knew what was going on, it's totally unacceptable. And so it should be. So if you're going to rely on that to get results, I think you'd need to go and drive a taxi in Melbourne or something.
You've made that pretty clear, mate. And there's nothing wrong with that, mate. That's what we're here to get your opinion out. And you know, if you're getting your foundation right and working on it hard, and working on it properly and being thorough, well, you know, you'd like to think that, you know, well, as you've proved, there's no need for electricity.
Exactly right. And there is no need for it. In fact, if I do a dog school, I'll have that little spiel about the use of electricity early on. And we'll get to the end of the 2 days, and in that time, we've sort of gone from that small, everything's small, right, bigger, until such time as we're out in paddocks, you know, casting our dogs and etc. And I'll just say to them, I'll say, now, where in the last 2 days where could we have used electricity to our benefit and to the dog's benefit? And they all look at each other and they more or less say, yeah, well, there's really nowhere we could have used it. There was nowhere we needed to use it. So I don't know where you use it. I really don't. I've seen the results of it, and it's I'm pretty much over it, actually.
Laura, you had a question here from Sue. Really?
There's a question here from Sue. How do you stop an older dog from pissing off and finding sheep?
Good question. No,
That's not the way to word that.
Yeah, no, that is a good question. Reminds me of a bloke I used to share for, actually, and I always thought he had good dogs. He did have good dogs, and I remember talking to him a few years later, and I said, he had a young dog there who done pretty well, and I said, how's that dog going? And he said, well, I had to put it down. I said, well, what, did it get sick or something? And he said, no, he said, I couldn't stop it from going down the paddock killing sheep. So he put it down. That's another instance where I think you need to go and have a really good look in the mirror. The problem there was the person. What we're dealing with these really good working dogs, they've evolved from the wolf, as everyone knows by now. So that's where they've come from. When they see your sheep or see your cattle or your goats, all they want to do is chase it, catch it, kill it, and eat it. And that's why they make such great working, great workmates, is because they've got that. But through our training, we teach them to do it in such a way that it suits us. But part of them being part of our life, part of that is making sure that I have this rule 24/7 that I need to know where my dogs are all the time, 24/7. And so I don't go inside the house or go inside the shed or go somewhere and just leave them unattended, because that natural instinct, I hope, is going to kick in.
Yeah.
If I went and left my dogs just unattended for a few hours on my farm and went away and come back and there was no deceased sheep or animals around, I'd be pretty disappointed, because it just means that my little wolves aren't, they've turned a bit soft on me. Yeah. So to Sue, I just say, to avoid that happening, just have a lead near your back door or wherever. Have a lead in your pocket. As my DVDs will show, every time you get out of bed, the first thing that goes in your pocket before your handkerchief is a lead. And every time, just hook your dog up so that he can't go away. Once they start doing it, they'll keep doing it, and then you'll have a pup, and he'll take the pup down, and then your whole pack's turn pear-shaped. So just don't let them go. Know where they are 24/7, and if you've got to go somewhere, well, confine them.
I suppose you can bring that back to the earlier training back on your lead as well, and getting your recall as well.
Absolutely, but even then, as I said, if I left any of my dogs unattended, I'd be disappointed if they didn't go down the paddock and get up to some mischief. I want them to still have
that desire.
That desire really strong. That's what makes them such great working dogs.
Yeah, awesome. Sorry, mate. I was just reading another question there. Do you want to read that? Oh, I can't. Everything's blurring now. Too much time in front of the computer
This
today.
one?
Yep.
Oh, there's a question come in from Mark Mangold. If you have a young dog that will mainly be used for cattle work, do you always start it on sheep and then progress to cattle, or do you bypass sheep and start that young dog on calves?
I have started pups off on cattle, but years ago. I wouldn't do it now because I lost some. I've lost too many because just with their age, as I said, they haven't got the capacity to learn when they're young, and they get in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they'll wear a hoof to the head and get run over or something. And even if they're still alive after it, quite often they've really had the confidence taken out of them. So I always start them off on something that's going to run away from them, like lambs or young sheep, something that is going to run away from them, and that builds up their confidence. They think they're fantastic because they get a bit of a chase. So if at all possible, I always start them on sheep. People use ducks. I've never used them, but any dogs see anything that moves as a food source. So you can train them on anything, but sheep are ideal to me anyway. It's just suited me. Yeah.
Mate, you've obviously helped lots of different people training. What do you personally take away from helping people?
Well, it's rewarding to, especially the young people. I think I've had probably, I don't know, be getting close to 1,500 people, I think, through schools. I've never set out to do schools because they take up a lot of time. It's only when people ask me and we try and do it. But I really like getting young people off on the right track as far as being good to their dogs, because if they're good to their dogs, they'll have good dogs.
Yep.
My number thing that drives me is that trying to change the attitude towards people's attitudes towards working dogs. That's my passion, is just to try and make the life of our dogs better, because it's payback time. It's time we acknowledge the enormous contribution our working dogs have made for us and to this country. And that's why I started the Casterton festival and stuff, because the Kelpie originated there, and I thought what a wonderful opportunity to have this huge celebration of Kelpie. Everyone else, we've all got special days, the grand final day and this day and that day. Well, how about having a day for a weekend for our working dogs? Unfortunately, it's become a bit of just a dog sale now, which is not really what the initial concept was supposed to be. But I just think we've got to celebrate, put them up front and centre. I think Jack Gleeson and the Kelpie, I think they should be on our currency. We've got Ned Kelly and the Queen. I mean, if you ask me, Jack Gleeson has given us something far more than either of them have. I'm going to get myself in trouble here today.
No, that's all right. I love the honesty. But while we're there, you're actually leading into a couple of questions that we had for you there was, but do you believe, with all the interest in working dog auctions at the moment, do you believe it's good for our industry? Like, will people start to put a realistic value on the worth of a good working dog?
Yeah, I'm in two minds now. As I said, I was very much involved in starting Casterton, which was the first auction. The reason I started that was part of this celebration, and I just seen it as like the Kelpie originated when Jack Gleeson swapped his horse for a pup, and that was called Kelpie.
That's right.
So to commemorate that at Casterton, I thought, well, we'll have a modern day trade, just like Gleeson had 130 years ago, where he swapped his pup for his horse, swapped the horse for a pup. We'll have a modern day trade, so we'll get all these young men and women stockmen bring their pups here, and we'll have a modern day trade. So, and from that, the auction was born. But I'm in two minds. Well, one thing, good thing that it has done is put a value on working dogs, so that before the auctions, like people would get a pup for a bag of dog food and a 2-year-old dog for a box of beer and all this sort of stuff. So they were very disposable. The people didn't put a value on them, and because of that, they were treated the same as that. Whereas now, I remember the first auction we had in Casterton. I think it was one of the Elfinvale dogs made $2,000, topped the auction, 2,000.
Yeah, right.
And it just blew the industry away. They thought, wow, what's I copped it, what's this bloke done? He's stuffed the industry. How can we afford it? But I was delighted, because I thought, well, whoever paid that money for the dog's going to look after it.
Yeah.
So that's the good side of it. On the bad side of it, I have started to see, or not started to see, I've sort of been aware of it in the back of my mind, is that we've still got people buying these dogs out of auctions without that knowledge that I talk about. And they've still got this thing in the back of their mind that it's bash and crash, it's pain and fear, it's break them in, it's knock it out of them. They've still got that mentality. In fact, there was, on the weekend, there was 2 working dog auctions. There was one in New South Wales and one in South Australia. On the ABC today, I actually heard the buyer of one of those top price dogs interviewed. And I shuddered, actually, in disbelief at what he was saying about how he had bought dogs previously and they hadn't worked out. And he hoped this one did. And it was more or less coming through that if it didn't work out,
we moved on.
It wouldn't be good for the dog. And
Yeah.
I thought, we've got to get past that. We just got to get past it. It was a person that didn't have the knowledge required to drive the dog. Craig Lowndes can get in a racing car at Bathurst and he's probably going to win. I could go and get in his car tomorrow, even though I've been driving on the road for 60 years. I could get in Craig Lowndes' racing car at Bathurst and I'd come last, because I haven't got the knowledge or the skill to drive. And it's the same with our dogs. It takes a skill and a lot of knowledge to know how to drive them. So if you just get one from somewhere and you haven't got that, well, it's not going to end well. So,
Yep.
But it is not hard to learn. So if anyone's listening to this and thinking, geez, what hope have I got? It isn't difficult. It's just those steps, as I said, just one step on top of another step on top of another step. Change your attitude so that it's working with the dog, not fighting it. It's part of you. It'll all come together for you. So just change the attitude, change the way we look at working dogs. Any dog for that matter, but I've got a special interest in working dogs.
Was there someone that inspired you when you were a young fella and, helped you create a style? Well, what their inspiration on you helped you create your style?
I wouldn't put it like that, because I sort of was going all right. I think I had seen things that I didn't like.
Yep.
And so that's what I learned to do, the opposite to what I was seeing. So I did the opposite and it worked. And I can clearly remember a defining moment where I was still a kid, child. And it's when kids used to, had to work a bit. And I was in a shearing shed. I'd been in a lot of trouble, and I had this young dog, and I was trying to shift sheep from one. It was shearing time. Trying to shift sheep from one pen to another, and I couldn't get it. I was bogged down. The sheep were bogged down. I couldn't shift them, and I knew I was in strife if we didn't have a resolution pretty quickly. And I pleaded with this young dog to come over the top of the sheep towards me, and I was just kidding to him, and I was, probably in tears. Anyway, over he come, and I was that delighted, and I just hugged him and praised him, and I couldn't stop him from doing it after that. It was a defining moment where he seen the way I treated him after he did that. He just wanted to keep doing it because he knew that it was what I wanted done. So it was things like that was the defining moment. But there was people like, as I said, Greg Prince, an amazing man, and people like Lyndon Cooper from South Australia. I learned a lot. I love watching Lyndon. When I first started trialling, he just had that. He's just a natural stockman. Great with his dogs. Great. Sally Stanley, another lady that great, once again, great with the dogs, great stock woman. Yeah, a few people that she used to meet me every time I come off the trial ground. When I first started, she'd always have a stick in her hand and she said, "This is not for your dog, Ian, it's for you."
So you mentioned a bit about trialling there. So you obviously aren't trialling anymore, but you did do a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't do as much as I probably should have. But it was when I started the auction at Casterton and all the Kelpie Festival and stuff. I needed to get out, even though I was working dogs all the time myself. Then I needed to get out into the working dog fraternity to find out who was breeding, to try and get people to bring their dogs to the auction to sell them, because it was a new concept. And so I thought the only way I can do it is perhaps start trialling, and that way I'll meet some people that, you know, breed dogs and have dogs. So I started trialling, and I loved it. And I met a lot of, you know, really good people and friends for life. Really, I've really enjoyed it. And anyone that wants to learn position, how to position yourself to work dogs, how to get your dogs to do everything, and you know, you be quiet and get out of the road and you let your dogs do what they're good at. It's a great skill. So anyone that wants to learn how to good stockmanship, definitely go trialing. And you know, the camaraderie, they're great people, and it's one of the only sports where you'll have anywhere from an 8-year-old girl to an 80-year-old bloke. You're all thrown in the mix together and all competing on a level ground. That's what I like about it. And it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how old you are, how young you are, what sex you are. You're all in the mix together, and yeah, it's as we've just seen with the National Kelpie Trial. Yeah, it's a great sport for anyone to have a crack at and be successful at.
What's your fondest trialing? Sorry, I was going to ask, what's your fondest trialing memory?
All of them really. I've probably spent too much time organising trials, and that stopped me competing at a lot. I think I've organised 2 Australian Yard Dog Championships, and you know, things like that take a lot of work, and a lot of other trials that I've organised, been convener of. But I've enjoyed that as well, and I've done a lot of judging. So people call it, you know, you get asked to judge, so you just judge, and that, of course, when you're judging, that stops you competing. But I think I used to love going up to the Henty Field Day trial. I don't know what it's like now, but back then it was the best of the best, I thought. You know, the New South Wales stockmen are amazing, and great dogs, great people, good, you know, and they come off the stations, come off the farms. They're real working dogs. They weren't professional trial dogs. Yeah. And so I went up there and competed, and I got told before I left, don't worry, don't even bother going up there, because New South Wales will not let a Victorian win. So I kept going back, and I couldn't get in the top 10 for a few years, and then I got into the top 10, then I got into the top 6, and then I won it. And that was, I think, that meant so much to me. Really, it made me think, well, I can do this. Yeah.
Awesome.
So where do you believe is Dog Talk's spot in the community, and how can we help our members?
Oh, I think just doing what you're doing. I think it's a great thing. I take my hat off to both of you. I think it's a great initiative. It really is, because we're talking about this knowledge. That, to me, you know, you've got your genetics and the knowledge, and I think through forums like what you guys are starting, and with your magazine and everything, I think that you know, it's open to anybody to become a part of and access information, ask questions of people that they think might be able to help them. So I just think keep doing what you're doing. It'll grow. It's like when I started the auctions, you know, it's not an easy journey, but it's worthwhile. Just hang in there, and yeah, it'll be good.
If there's a person you'd like us to have a chat with at the moment, mate, is there anyone that comes to the top of your mind?
I did think about that, actually. There's one bloke I'd like to hear, Professor Paul McCreevy. I don't know whether you guys know about him. He was from the Sydney University, I know, but he's done a lot of work identifying traits in working dogs, like he's trying to put some science into it.
Yep.
I think that's good, but I also think, well, if we're going to do that, you know, if we're going to say to all farmers out there, well, you know, this is where the dogs are with the right traits, well, don't forget the knowledge of those farmers as well, because that's, like I said, that's 80% of it. But
Yep.
Professor Paul McCreevy, and he's also done a lot of trial work on the use of, you know, he's been involved in, he's got, well, how can I put this? He's got opinions on the use of electricity in training dogs.
Yeah.
He's got opinions on that. He's just, I've never met him, but I've certainly listened to him at every opportunity I get. And he's a dog man. So, and obviously a very intelligent person as well. So Professor Paul McCreevy, I guess you guys know John and Gary White.
Yep.
Yeah, I think like I've met, I have met both of them actually, but I've sort of haven't seen either of them for a long time. But I've certainly had a great deal of respect for John and Gary, of course. But definitely, you know, John was an absolute gentleman and really knew his stuff. So I don't know what John's up to these days, but either Gary or John, I think would be great.
Gary and Angie are watching tonight, so hi, Gary and Angie, and there you go.
Dropped him straight into it. We'll get
straight into it. Yeah. I'll have a call from him tomorrow. He'll be telling me how good the Dragons are.
Yeah, that's it.
Parramatta made the quarterfinals, mate. Just a quick reminder.
You're talking about that foreign code that I don't
know. The real football.
Yeah. In fact, I just heard before we started tonight that I don't know whether you guys are going to get to play the grand final. Brisbane, how's it all going up there?
Oh no, I thought it was a bit relaxed out here, but I'm not sure what's happening up there at the moment. So that'd be pretty tragic. They might have to just go back a couple of weeks, mate, and just pick Parramatta.
Yeah, us Victorians will be in tears if you can't play your grand final. We're really stressed about that. And I mean, people like Lyndon Cooper, he's been right around the country. He's achieved great things with his working dogs, and he's a natural. So it's just there's a few out there. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you. Mate, we've had a stack of questions here tonight. Sorry for the ones we couldn't get to, but we are a bit conscious of the time there as well, and we have sucked up a lot of your time there tonight, Ian. So we might start to close up a few things here. But mate, who did you think had the best question of the night there?
I thought that one that'll probably. I think a lot of the person that asked the question that a lot of people could relate to, and that was Sue with the dog pissing off. I think that's it for everybody. You know, people have the same with pups. You know, people get a little pup, and it's all cuddly and they love it to death, and then it becomes an adolescent and starts annoying the hell out of them. It won't come to them when they call it because it's getting smart. If I go to you, you're going to tie me up, and then it gets away from them and starts chasing sheep or chasing something and causing trouble. By the time you catch it, you're that wild that you do something really bad to it, and you've set your training back 3 years because, you know, you've done some real bad stuff. You've taken the dog's desire to do what it's supposed to do out of it. I think, Sue asking that question of the dog, if it gets away on you and does some damage, it's not the dog's fault, it's yours.
Yep. Well, there you go, Sue. Get in contact with the page and we'll get our bag of Enduro dog food to you. Also, I didn't give a plug at the beginning, but one thing, next on Friday, our Black Institute One Step Forward walk starts. I'd like to thank Marie McKillop and Lauren Vest for joining our team as well. So there's, I think, about 5 or 6 people part of that team now. And like I've said before, guys, if you can't donate with your walking, donate with your wallets. It's for a great cause there in mental health for Black Dog Institute.
We'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, all of our members asking questions, and you, of course, Ian, for answering them and giving us your time. We really appreciate it. And we also wanted to let people know, if you did want to jump on, the Stock Dog magazine does have some of Ian's videos available. Otherwise, you can also get it from the Doghouse Training.
I think we actually just placed another order for some more DVDs there. So there you go. There's plenty available for everyone.
So one last question, Ian.
No.
Would you-
Yes.
Pardon?
Sorry. Go.
Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks?
Would I rather fight them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Would you take the one duck or the 20 horses?
Sorry, say that again.
One duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks?
Oh, no, I'll just take one on. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what the right answer is. Is there a right answer?
There's no right one, mate. Just curious to see everybody's response and as to why.
Why? Well, I don't know. I just think, yeah, well, it's like you can see one, but if there's 20, well, you know.
They're coming from everywhere. You got to be Bruce Lee.
Everywhere. Yeah. I'd just like to focus on one for a start.
No, thank you much. Thanks very much for your time today, mate. We really appreciate having you on board, and for all our viewers today. And once again, remember, we learn every day, and the day we stop learning will be a sad day for all of us.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Good on you. Thank you.